A very good morning to all. I, Dr. Radhika Trikha, on behalf of Department of Science and Technology, Center for Policy Research at Panjab University, and Science Policy Forum, warmly welcome you all for the post-draft consultation on India's fifth National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, popularly known as STIP, open for public feedback until 31st January 2021. So earlier it was 25th January. So Dr. Gupta has officially made us first to announce that it has been now 31st January 2021. We are joined by representatives from different states and UTs of Northern India. The event is streamed live on YouTube channel of Science Policy Forum. I'm delighted to invite our audience to post their comments and suggestion on the policy draft with hashtag STIP. I repeat, hashtag STIP STIP, which we will be taken up at the end of the session and will also be included in a brief report to be prepared by the center, which will be communicated to the STIP Secretariat at DST. With this, I warmly welcome our worthy Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajkumar, our keynote speaker for the event, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, Head STIP Secretariat, our coordinator, Professor Nirmala, and all our elite representative thought leaders from government, academia, and industry, and our audience. Now I request Professor Nirmala, Coordinator, Center for Policy Research, to formally welcome all the participants of the event. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Radhika, for opening the session. A very good morning to all. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajkumar, our esteemed speaker, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, Advisor, Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Secretariat, DST, Government of India, dignitaries, representatives from the northern states, academia, industry, researchers, students, ladies and gentlemen. I, on behalf of DST-Centre of Science Research Policy, Panjab University, Chandigarh, for northern the new science, technology, innovation policy aims to bring about profound changes through a short-term, medium-term, and long-term mission mode projects by building a nurtured ecosystem that will promote research and innovation for both individuals and organizations. The draft policy was released for public feedback on 1st January 2021 after a lot of extensive discussions, and it has with various stakeholders, and it contains radical and progressive proposals and it can be a game changer, not only for the scientific community, but also for other those who are in touch with science. So it is, we could not have had a better person than Dr. Gupta, who is the driving force behind the policy, and to discuss with us the major recommendations of Science, Technology, Innovation and Policy 2021. It is our privilege and honor to have you, Dr. Gupta, with us. Now, because we have very less of time, I would like to invite our worthy Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajkumar, for his introductory remarks and his view on the upcoming Indian STIP. Professor Rajkumar.
Thank you, Professor Nirmala, a very esteemed guest and speaker, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta ji. I can see a very good number of academicians and scientists from the different institutions and the organization, faculty member of the Panjab University, organizing team of the Policy Research Center. Good morning, each one of you. And I, on my own behalf and on the behalf of the Panjab University fraternity, welcome each one of you, particularly Dr. Akhilesh Gupta. I'm very happy that this center is organizing a number of programs on the different theme of the science and technology, and connecting not only the scientists, the corporate persons also. You know, without the help of the corporate people, whatever the researches are, whatever the deliverables you are having could not come in the reality. So for that purpose, my appeal is to all, one and all, that they must connect the corporate people before starting any research, and the identification of the issue should also be very pertinent, taking into consideration the requirement of the society, the requirement of the people, and particularly if you are focusing the local issues, then that would be a great help to the not only to the local people, but to the country as at large. Our scientists are par excellence. They contributed in a different way for the development of the country and development of the society. Now, our priority and method must be must be refocused, revisited. The reason being, because every areas have its own issues, its own peculiarities, its own means the characteristics. Then whenever we are deciding the issues, then we must take into consideration the requirement of that local people. Only when the researches that we are coming up would be useful for the local people and the country at large. I will not take much time, because the very esteemed the scientists and the researchers are in the queue to give their remark and have the interface. But my appeal is only, as a vice chancellor, they must come out with a concrete strategy so that we can connect the research institutions, academic institutions, university and colleges, as well as the corporate world, for the better researches in the different domain of knowledge. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Professor Rajkumar, for your elite words and bringing out the significance of the need of new science policy in the country. Now, I take pleasure to invite Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, Head STIP Secretariat and Advisor to DST, for his talk on major recommendations of Draft Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2021. I invite you, Dr. Gupta, for your talk. So we can see your screen. Can you put it on presentation mode?
Yeah.
So your screen has gone. Can you yeah, you're sharing it again.
Thank you. I hear me?
Yes, Dr. Gupta. Yes.
On Vice Chancellor, Panjab University, Professor Rajkumar, the distinguished participant panelist of today's deliberation, a large number of participants joining from different institutions, and also the representative from the state government of Ladakh, Jammu Kashmir, Himachal, Haryana, Chandigarh, and Uttar Pradesh. A very good morning to all of you, and I, on behalf of the Department of Science and Technology, I welcome all of you to this deliberation. I am going to make a presentation on the major recommendations that have Science and Technology Innovation Policy. I would like to be very brief. I am going to give only salient recommendation, and you are, I mean, this is open for any kind of question that I will be able to answer. The presentation outline that I have thought of, we will give contextual referencing of STIP, and then why India needs a new policy, what is the formulation process, summary of consultation, major recommendation, and the overall vision of this policy. So this is not the first time that India is making this policy. This is the fifth time. And in the past, after the independence, we have had four policies so far. So the first policy that came in 1958 called Scientific Policy Resolution. This policy had focused mainly on creating the science temper in the country and how science can be brought as a measure of promoting the growth. The technology policy statement of 1983 came because of a unique situation that happened, in around this time when India made the first Cochrane experiment, and many countries in the West, they denied India access to technologies, especially so the focus was creating or attaining technological competence and self-reliance. 2003 policy, the Science and Technology Innovation, Science and Technology Policy, for the first time brought science connection to the socio-economic sectors, and also first time this policy had talked about connecting S&T with innovation. The decade of 2010 to 2020, when it was declared the decade of innovation, the Science and Technology Innovation Policy of 2013 had brought greater focus on the innovation and inclusive development. All these policies were brought in that circumstances and situation at that time, and therefore they all are relevant, they all have importance. All of them led to several major changes in the country in science and technology and innovation area, and institutional mechanism. So therefore, these policies have larger impact on the society in general, but the S&T ecosystem in particular. Look at the all these policies. After 88, it was nearly 25 years that we brought the next policy of 83, and after 83, nearly 20 years after we brought 2003 policy, and then 2003 policy we brought after 10 years, 2013. Only 7 years have gone. Need new policy. What actually had happened that prompted government to bring a new policy? This came because of several reasons. First important reason was that last 6 years have witnessed, some very unprecedented progress in STI area, and they were not done earlier. They were in many ways very, very transformational also. And these transformational changes needed a way forward, and taking them forward and needed a policy push. Also, the COVID-19 had brought several new dimension to STI. In fact, last year have been the year of science, where the science has contributed to society in a big way. And on that, in fact, with that reference, Honorable Prime Minister had given a clarion call on achieving an Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, in order to achieve an Atmanirbhar Bharat, we need a direct, connection with the STI, and STI can, contribute in a big way. The focus of Atmanirbhar Bharat has been how do we address the issue of indigenous technology, grassroots innovation, and technology indigenization. These are going to be the key words for this policy. Another development that took place, and this is the parallel development globally that is taking place, the emergence of disruptive and impactful technology in terms of the artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, machine learning, and so many, and quantum technology, and so many of them coming and impacting our life. India has to catch up with these technologies, development, and so therefore policy has to bring these kind of focus, and therefore the policy has, in fact, captured this thing. Another very important thing that COVID has, in fact, made us learn, and in fact, just now, Professor mentioned this part in a in his opening address, that I think time has come when the industry, academia and R&D institution, they must work together with putting government as it. So this is a kind of convergence that was required and urgently required now. And why it is, this is like, this has been demonstrated during the COVID-19. A few months back, India was not manufacturing any of these PPE, diagnostic aid, ventilators, and all those things. Today, we are not only manufacturing these things, but also exporting. That shows India has a strong STI ecosystem. The only thing that is missing is the synergy convergence of working with the industry. So R&D institutions and academic institutions alone cannot achieve this. They need to bring industry into, in the system, right? From the time of, technology development, leading and taking it to the market level. So much of progress India made, as I mentioned, in recent years. Our expenditure on R&D have gone up 3 times in the last 10 years. Even per capita R&D expenditure at PPE got double in last 10 years. We, from the 5th position, attained 3rd position in just few years' time in terms of number of publications in SCI journal. Even in terms of quality, we are now 9th position from 13 in 2014. Number of PhD, in fact, now we are 3rd position in the world after US 39,000, China 34,000, India produces 25,000 PhD in science. In fact, we are the 3rd largest higher education system in the world. The number of startups made so much of progress. Prime Minister called for Startup India had made such a big impact in last 6 years that today we have 41,000 plus startup in the country, and a large, nearly 1/3 of them in STI area. And this all happened in last few years. Even in terms of unicorn, India has, in fact, recent report of that Huron Global Unicorn, you find that we are now have 61 unicorn. Unicorn having the asset more than $1 billion. We are now number 4 in position. In terms of resident patent filing, in fact, we time, but still we are way behind the global West. I think we need to work on this. Even in terms of global innovation index, so much progress has been done from, say, 81st position in 2015 to 48th position now, but we have a lot to do in this area as well. The big development took place in terms of women participation in R&D in recent years, in the past 6 years. So it got double from 25,000 plus to now 56,000 women participate out of 3.42 lakh R&D personnel. But this number is still the percentage only 16%, which need to go up in the time to come. Number of R&D personnel also has gone up in last 6 years. nearly 40% increase had taken place. So in summary, though we have made so much progress, the focus of the policy that we must take this progress forward in a pole vaulting speed rather than going for incremental way. Now, this policy is different from the rest of the policies of the past. All policies that we made, in prior to this, the core policy, they were largely thought-driven in terms of their making and even in terms of their participation in consultation. This policy, we made some unique features of this policy. I think this is a combination of a bottom-up and expert-driven top-down process. It is a decentralized process of formulation because for the first time in the history of any policy in the country, state governments were involved in the policy formulation process, and they were included right from the beginning of the formulation. Also, the line ministries were the first time included as a part of policy formulation, not at the stage of post-draft consultation, but right at the beginning of the formulation process. This policy is evidence-based. We have, in fact, a team of people who gather evidences as what happened in India and abroad. We studied a large number of policies, and all previous policies were thoroughly studied, and then these evidence-based elements were brought into it. This is inclusive because we included almost every section of the society into the formulation process, not just scientists. So this policy is different in many ways. That this is not a policy of all the scientists, for the scientists, and for the by the scientists. It has been a very different policy where all sections of the society were included. This entire process was divided into 4 tracks of actions. We had extended public consultation and expert consultation. You had thematic group consultation as part of the expert level discussions, and this became the basis of policy formulation. As I mentioned in the track 3, ministries and state consultation took place. And the last track 4, was the apex level multi-stakeholder consultation, ranging, we provided apex level representation from almost every, key section of the society. We had a very extensive consultation process during last 7 months, and no part of the no section of the society were left behind in this entire process. We had 300 rounds of consultation in last 6 months. 9,000 people, in fact, I personally interacted with 9,000 people one-on-one. And similarly, 34,000 people participated, through 6 broad activities as part of extended consultation. We got 95,000 people participated as a part of quiz that we launched on MyGov. And more than 1 lakh suggestions and ideas we received in these policy formulation process, which were captured and included, many of them included in the policy. This was the largest, widest, shortest, and the most intense exercise that for any national policy undertaken by government. And 300 consultation in 6 months, average 2 meetings, including Saturday, Sunday. 43,000 people consulted and nearly 1 lakh suggestions. This is the first policy where states and Indian diaspora were also consulted. Also, it's a well-distributed classification in terms of region, age, gender, education, economic status, and so on. Now, a very good gender balance was maintained right from the beginning of the policy formulation process. The editorial and drafting teams had 40% representations on the women. And so the women dominated in the entire policy formulation exercise. Also, we had a good mix of young and experienced people. And in the policy formulation, young 5-year person and the oldest was 84-year person. So we also had kept in mind that the people, but the largest classification in the policy formulation were younger people below 45 years. This was a team STIP. All the smiling faces on this team, young people. The average age of the young people team STIP was only 27, 28 years. I'm the only odd man out in the entire team, but rest all are young people who work for the policy formulation. It started with Prime Minister taking a meeting at the PM stack in November 2018. We then had several committees formed. But in case, if you see, literally, it took 6 months time. We started working on this policy only in the May 2020 and released the draft policy on 31st December 2020. The policy has 11 chapters. I'm sure some of you must have read it. I'm going to present very briefly a summary of these chapters. So chapter 1 is the most crucial and important chapter called Open Science. In the Open Science, the big idea that we are proposing as part of the policy is setting up a national STI observatory, which will become a central repository of all kinds of data related to and generated by the STI ecosystem through government funding. The INSTA is a new, a kind of overarching portal. There are portals already available in this field, but this is a big idea where there will be one big portal for the country where all the publicly funded research in terms of manuscript, research data, information, research protocols, review articles, everything will be placed on this portal, central repository for everybody to access. We also want all data to be shared through, which will be generated through public funded research, to be made available to everybody. Also, open access of all the manuscript that is created by any researcher to be deposited in the central observatory and central portal. And there is a big idea which we are proposing as a part of this open access is the one nation, one subscription. Right now, in fact, the most of the government institutions are actually paying something like 1,500 crore annually to the publishing houses for access to journals. And but this number of people who get access is only few lakhs. What here we are proposing is that this, through a centrally negotiated price, we get access to these journals paid by the government, but given access to every Indian citizen in the country, so that the payment will be centrally done, but every citizen, every student, every researcher in the country will get free access to these things. And this is the biggest democratization of science. And in fact, there is a study done saying that this earns so much of. The first benefit is with the access given to the people, this will act as a multiplier, and the number of research papers will increase manyfold. the next chapter is the capacity development chapter, where we are in fact proposing setting up a research excellence framework for higher education institution, where the assessment of their research outcome can be done. In fact, I want to mention we have a scheme called PARS, which has done this kind of assessment of the universities in the country, where outcome based on various parameters like at index or I-10 or many other index citation index are being devised to assess their research outcome. Also, I think we want that to create engaged universities where I think this is aligned with the national education policy, where the interdisciplinary research can be promoted and the science, social science-based interventions can be created through, in a more organized and institutionalized way. Also, there is a need for connecting innovation at the local R&D, academic and R&D institutions with industry, MSME, and startup. Most of the universities in the country, they work at a very low TRL, technology readiness level. And there they need to go up. I mean, if they want to connect with the industry, I think they need to go, up with their TRL level and go at least to 5 or 6 TRL. I think the idea is connecting, these MSME to and the startup to the academic institution is a big idea. And so, there are 63 million MSME in the country, the second largest in the world after China. And these in fact, MSc, they earn something like 31% of the GDP for the country. And what their contribution in R&D has been very, very limited. I think government wants that we should take MSME into the whole and connect R&D to the MSME. Also, connecting the R&D to the innovation is important. Also, the collaborative research centers are required to be set up with MSMEs and startup. And these are a big idea that came up through the long deliberation that how this can. So we have clear strategy drawn for this. How do we do it? In the policy, it may not be mentioned, but there is a separate document that is getting ready for that. Also, transforming. See, we have in India 7,000 research R&D institutions. Nearly 50% of them in the private sector. But these institutions work independent of academic institutions, and they have a challenge of getting recognized through the university system. The big idea is that how do we transform this R&D institution to research universities, and so that they become a part of the academic system also. Also, India has huge R&D infrastructure laid in the R&D institution and academic institution, but there is an inequality in terms of their positioning and their availability. I have in fact I travel since I was also secretary UGC long time back. After that, I developed this interest, travel so many universities in the country. Especially, I traveled to the Himalayan University, and I found that there exists so much of the talent and expertise where they lack infrastructure, and therefore R&D infrastructure to be equitably distributed and available to the researchers is very important. In the financing side, I think we want that STI to be mainstream with all activities in the country, and there is a proposal that we should have STI unit and with minimum earmark budget at every central, state, local government and public enterprises and private enterprises companies. This will create a big ecosystem for the STI in the country. Also, as I said, for the first time, states are included as a part of the STI ecosystem. States have been, by and large, not being part of formal R&D, and there is a central sector scheme were applicable to state in R&D. We would like them to be more, I think, get connected with the central institutions in R&D, and therefore the state needs to earmark some percentage of the state allocation for STI activity. Also, these are disconnected with the R&D ecosystem for the country, and therefore this policy is promoting the domestic private sector connection with the MNCs, and whatever it entails to, we will like to provide facilitation for that. The big issue that we have been talking about, how do we increase the gross expenditure on R&D to 2% of the GDP. This we have been talking for several decades, but now this policy is not only giving these statements, but also bringing the action that need to be taken for taking this to 2%. We have had a very intense several rounds of consultation with the industry and industry captains, and there are several recommendations they have suggested. For example, one important thing is that they must be given some tax incentive. There is one big idea which has been brought here, and I would like to elaborate on this here, the remodeling patent box regime. So, in fact, this is a big idea that you see, India is in fact progressing well in the GII ranking, but it still lags behind so much because of the one reason that our patent regime is not very favorable for taking forward the innovation. India, in fact, brought a big intervention in 2016 for the patent box regime, where the income by way of royalty from patent were introduced, and for the patent registered in India. India's resident, in fact, India has a unique. If you compare India with China, you find 20% of the patents are filed by non-resident Indian, whereas in China, 90% of the patents are filed by the resident Chinese. This need to be addressed. So we are in fact suggesting a new remodeling of the patent box, where the income from sale of product manufactured based on the patent technology can be introduced. That is notional royalty to be introduced. Also, the income from the infringement damages, which means that if a product is being another product is created with the same patent, then the infringement damages should be compensated. These are being brought as a part of these. Also, how do we create enhance the matching support? I have already mentioned the industry and MSMEs, how they can be brought as a part of the national R&D ecosystem through innovation support is a big idea, that's it. We are in the strategic area, and this is the first time that India is embarking in this area, that the organizations like DRDO or the ISRO and all coming forward with developing partnership with the industry. And this idea we are developing, that we need to set up an STI development bank for creating a corpus for long-term investment in the select strategic areas. Also create this kind of system can become an enabling mechanism for private sector to come forward and invest in India, invest in the overall growth of the country. Also, there is a big demand from private sector industry that some of the general finance stringent to be followed by industry, and they create a lot of hindrance. We are, proposing this. In fact, we already have implemented one such system for a national mission for interdisciplinary cyber physical system program mission. So the private sector industry wants for the big missions, we need to have some waiving of GFRs. In the again, there is a need to bring trust between industry and government, private and government. This trust can be done, and appreciation can be developed only when we have a joint finance system across government and academia and industry, where the people from the government can go to industry and spend some time. From industry, people can come to government and spend 1 or 2 years. Appreciation can be developed for such kind of thing. Also, the rural areas, as somebody says, the India and Bharat need to be addressed differently. We need to have focus on Bharat because so much is R&D need to be taken to the rural areas, and this is already being done in isolation, but I think need to be formalized. Also, the line ministries are working for R&D in several areas. I think that need to create a new model for them to participate formally with us. These are doing research. This is a demand from the researcher, especially students in the research area. They have been demanding that government systems are too very stringent and sometimes become very difficult to get access. And when you apply for a proposal, it takes so much of time to get this process, and money is released. So this is a whole chapter on ease of doing research is included, where how do we decrease the administrative burden on the researcher using digital platform in e-governance without having subjectivity, without a man or woman handling that. This can be done without this. Also, how do we make sharing of knowledge and data done seamlessly without any hindrance? We need to create adopt a global benchmark for ease of doing research. So much can be done, so much has been done, but I think this is a very important for researcher. This will be a multiplier in the country for the researcher to choose research as their career. Innovation, important area is two full chapters are devoted for the innovation and entrepreneurship. This is a gray area for a country. Traditional knowledge systems and grassroots innovations have been largely in the informal sector. These are, in fact, there is an estimated 1 lakh grassroots innovators have been, scouted by the National Innovation Foundation. So, in fact, there are much larger number. This is only a rough estimate. Now, all these innovations are taking place without getting connected to the formal R&D and the market. What we are proposing that universities should become the connectors. They should take responsibility, and so we can create an innovation center in every university for facilitating grassroots innovators to get connected to the market. This becomes a very good facilitation I think this will be a great service to the. Also, we are to create a system where the grassroots innovator can register, claim IPR, file the patent, and do all the kind of thing that normal patent people are doing. There is another big idea that came up. India, as I said, India made a big progress in terms of, the startup. We have 41,000 startups, set up. But I think we need much more longer than this thing. Now, this can be done in a different way. We have so far set up several TBIs, technology business incubators, and connected them with the startup. Now, time has come that we need to create this startup in a virtual environment. And so we need theme-based, distributed virtual startup. This will increase the number 10 times in next, say, decade or so. That is a big idea, the thinking. And now technology, and that the policy is focusing on the indigenous development of technology and also technology indigenization. There's a big gap in this area, and therefore there is a need to focus on this thing. I think the sustainable technology is also well connected to the technology indigenization and indigenous technology development, because most of the indigenous technologies are known to be sustainable. Static technology area, I already mentioned that this is going a big way, and there is a need to set up a static technology board and a static technology development fund, which can create an environment of connecting industry to the government in terms of development. Also, there is so much of technology being developed for civilian use as a part of the static technology development. And so we intend to have positioning several startups through these spin-off technologies. Now, this is a big, I think, we remain concerned about with the equity and inclusion. Although India has done tremendously well in the area of mainstreaming equity and inclusion in the R&D, but I think we need a subtexting of this into all STI policies and processes. I think we are proposing positioning an Indian-centric equity and inclusion charter, which will address the discrimination that exists in STI based on gender, caste, geography, language, disability, and other exclusions and inequality. For women, as I said, if you look at the global picture, 30% women participate globally, in all advanced countries in research. India, as I said, is only 16% of women are there in research. I think we need to target this to 30%. Now, another area is the women, leadership in the country. In fact, this is a big issue that we face, that we must promote talented women to take leadership position in the country. None of the IITs so far had any women director. It is a coincidence, but I think, you may also argue that the women don't take engineering as their career, but that's not true. And so there are inequality, not necessarily deliberate, but it exists in the society. I think we need to work on that. Also, the other issues of inequality that exists on LGBTQ. This is the first policy where LGBTQ community has been brought, and there are issues related to that, their rights and their representation. and also differently able individuals, that is Divanganas, how they can represent in the STI. There are issues related to ageism in the policy in the society, and there, for example, the women take wreck in their service because of various social reasons. But when they join, if they are given the wreck period is not counted, and then they lose several positioning in the career. Also, there is the issue of dual recruitment policy. In some of the institutions in India, we have a system where the husband and wife both cannot work in the same department. Because there is a conflict of interest. I think because of that, the women do the compromise, and they ask their husband to go forward and take your job and let them sit at home or do some other job. I think this is a loss to the country, and so we would like to encourage this thing. So also, institutional mechanism needed to address the issue of equity and inclusion in the thing. Science communication area which is being considered in society as the vertical. Now we will like to mainstream this and make science communication as a part of the culture of communicating science to people. And this is a big area. We do a great research in our own domain, but when it comes to communicating to people through media, I think we lack that spirit and that the idea. We would like science communication to be a big area for this purpose. Also, I think science needs to be communicated in regional or local languages. Some of the institutions are doing great job, but this need to be put as a part of the policy so that the local public get benefited by the science that is translated and communicated to them in their own languages. Database on science communication is an important area for this thing. Outreach, I think there is already a policy coming out, scientific social responsibility policy, and scientists and academicians must take advantage of that and become science communicator for their institution. There is a mainstreaming issue that I have already mentioned, but we now want that a dedicated wing for science communication and public engagement in every institution in the country. I think I have come nearly to the end of my presentation. So, international science engagement, as I said, for the first time, diaspora had been addressed. We would like now, most of the people talk in India that we have been talking about that how do we create gain from grain drain. So this is a very common perception that we should bring people back to India. There are 3 crore Indian outside India. 30 million people are there outside. Outside that, nearly 20 lakh or so are scientists. Now these are, there is, so therefore our position in policy is that while we can promote bringing some of the scientists back to India, but I think bigger focus here is how these people can contribute to India while sitting there still, which is called a grain circulation and not grain gain. So grain gain is bringing people back to India. Grain circulation is keeping people there still, but they contribute to India. We have a big study on this. I'm not going to elaborate, but this is the idea that we need to use diaspora for facilitating and contributing to India. Also, we are creating a big portal for this diaspora. This will be a part of the policy. Change in the focus of the policy. So far, we have been using science and technology for diplomacy. I think apart from science and technology for diplomacy, we must use diplomacy for science and technology. We have bilateral agreements with 82 plus countries in the country, with the 82 countries in the world. I think we need to have developed such partnership with more number of countries through building the S&T for diplomacy for S&T program. Also, there are science counselors sitting in 4 countries in the world: US, Germany, Russia, and Japan. I think we need more science counselors in other parts of the country. I'd like to set up an intergovernmental, interministerial mechanism to creating this STI ecosystem convergence with line ministries and other ministries. At the same time, we will wish to set up an central state and interstate governance mechanism, kind of where we can bring state government and connect them with the national ecosystem. So state level ecosystem and national level ecosystem of science and technology can work together in tandem to create a national STI asset. Also, we will like to have, all of you are aware that there's going to be a National Research Foundation, and therefore we would like to set up this research innovation governance framework which connect all the researchers in the country through a National Research Foundation system. Also creating a suitable metric system for creating. India would like to create its own metric system of assessing the outcome of the research, individual research outcome, to a more organized way rather than following the Western world. We also would like to have a lateral recruitment system for professional and subject matter in the governments, so that the government become more efficient and more should be able to have serve the public in a much better way. And also a capacity building authority for strengthening and integrating all the capacity building initiative of the country. Last initiative is the STI Policy Institute, where the data, policy, and advice system can be integrated. Here also, the states can work very in tandem with the government, central government, where they can have their own STI policy unit, and which can become their focal point in the state for all STI related policy decisions, and that they can connect with the central government through a national ecosystem. Are these policies that all that we do must bring India among the top 3 superpowers in the world in the decade to come. We already are, but I think I'm talking about the overall 3rd position in the country should be there. I mean, I'm not saying 3rd position, it should be among the 3rd. So if we can, US, I think that should be the aim of the country. The science is relevant, and therefore this is the focus of this policy. We must bring people into science and technology department. We aim to have full and equal researchers with the lowest in the world, which is 255 per million population, to double and in the next decade, next 5 years. All of double in next 5 years. We must bring our excellence level to make it, worthy of and getting and highest level award in the coming decade. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I had a little longer time.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for presenting the major recommendation of the policy draft, as you said, big ticket ideas that the policy presents to reinvigorate the whole Indian STI ecosystem. So now we move to the next segment where we would be taking comments from our participants, our panelists from representing different areas like from government, academia and industry. And then we can take it from public as well. I invite my co-moderator, Ms. Mamta Mahatwaj, Senior Scientist C at DST-Centre for Policy Research at Panjab University, Chandigarh, to introduce our segment 2. Over to you, Mamta.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Radha. And thank you, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, for such an illuminating talk on STIP 2021. Thank you so much. So now we will be having our second segment to take input from the representatives from the government organizations, academic and research institutions, and from the industry sector. So I'm glad to announce that we have representatives from state including Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Uttar Pradesh, and UT Chandigarh. And from academic and research from Panjab University, Chandigarh, LPU Jalandhar, BBA Mohali, Chitkara University, Chandigarh, and Millet from the industry from AI Chandigarh, Pole Vault Technologies, Panchkula, Harsim Agrotech Mohali. So, because of the time constraint, I request all the delegates to share your views within 2 to 3 minutes so that we can get the inputs from all our representatives. And just in case you further want to share your thoughts on STIP 2021, you can comment at the official website of DST-CPR, Chandigarh and DST. So we will definitely consider them. So without taking much time, I invite our first representative from government organization, Dr. J.K. Arora, Executive Director, Punjab State Council for Science and Technology, Chandigarh. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Please confirm.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Thank you. As a presentation, and I must say that it's a very well-rounded draft policy document which has come up from your side and your team. It covers I would say, diverse aspects and many out-of-the-box ideas also there. From the center-state connect side, a couple of ideas to further, I would say, from the effective implementation point of view, when we actually take the policy on ground, a few ideas I would like to share. One, I think I'll start from towards the end where you ended your presentation. You talked of, data building. And in the beginning also, you talked of, a central, national STI observatory. I understand from the observatory point of view, you meant that all the grants are, the information on grants is available on one portal. But you also mentioned that, as I understand, the whole premise of the policy is let it be stakeholder driven, let it be evidence driven. So to actually effectively for the policy to be, evidence driven and stakeholder driven, I would say that there has to be, if the policy could clearly spell out that how will it happen in terms of the center-state connect. I suggest that as the government does at the central level, the state level also to build up a data repository. We may call it state STI observatories or whatever name or the dashboards it could be given, so that from the actual stakeholders, the data flows to a central point in the states and then goes to the central dashboard. I think that will bring a lot of authenticity to the data and will kind of involve a lot of stakeholder engagement. So this was one I wanted to make. This will also help the states in actually assessing their strengths and come out with the strategies to augment their strengths, which will of course help the country in totality to build up its cumulative strengths. The second aspect that comes to my mind is that we all have been agreeing that there has been a disconnect between teaching and research in India, and the policy also proposes to transform the existing R&D institutions to research universities. I would say, though in one form or the other, the draft says something to this extent, but not so clearly, that there is a need to channelize adequate funds to the existing universities so as to leverage their huge manpower strength to increase research competence of the country. And the third point that comes to my mind is that, again, the policy says, again, a very good idea, that there will be an initiative to have prestigious science policy fellowships at the mid-career, senior level for curating, updating knowledge in emerging sectors. You also said that research and innovation governance framework. So again, there has to be, if the final policy draft clearly spells out, I would kind of remind you, once we were having this review of state climate change knowledge centers, and you suggested that why don't the states develop the researchers networks, and then Government of India will see to it that these networks are connected to the national networks in specific domains, could be emerging sectors or so on, and then to the international, they have the international connect as well. So if the final policy can actually spell it out so clearly that the states will be supported to develop the researchers networks at the state levels, and they will be connected by to the national pool, I think that will bring a lot of enthusiasm among the states, among the researchers at the state level. And just one or two more points. One, that you mentioned about facilitating channels for diaspora. Policy says so, and you rightly said, first time the policy says so, stays so. So again, you would agree that diaspora kind of has a special kind of passion for their native places. They like to invest in the places of their origin in the country. So again, if you bring in that element in the policy, that the diaspora will be galvanized to strengthen the STI ecosystem in their native states, and then accordingly the strategies are also developed accordingly. Again, I would say that this will bring a lot of enthusiasm among the states, among the diaspora, and the absorption capacity of states will also become more ready to absorb that. And one very pertinent thing I would like to mention here, that you said that there is huge gap in the domain of tech commercialization. You said, there is regarding technology readiness level, it has to be, a lot has to be done in this context. I would say DST has an existing framework of patent information centers set up across the country. It's a DST's own network. If the policy comes up with an idea of upgrading these to also serve as the tech transfer facilitation offices, I think it will be a game changer. Then we've been talking of this disconnect between the technologies since, but if a specific, well-framed and well-articulated strategy is spelled out in the policy, I think it will make a lot of difference. And also, I look forward to your support in developing state STI policies. We are we've already started doing the groundwork on that, and look forward to your advice. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your innate words. And moving ahead, now Mr. Sujit Randhawa, Principal Scientific Officer, Panjab Himachal Pradesh Council for Science and Technology and Environment, Government of Himachal Pradesh. Over to you, sir. Mr. Sujit Randhawa from Himachal Pradesh State Council. Are you there, sir? Okay. Now we can have inputs from Sujit. Before him, I would like to invite Dr. Nasir Ahmed Shah, Joint Director and Additional Director, Jammu and Kashmir Science, Technology and Innovation Council, Government of Jammu and Kashmir. Over to you.
Welcome, respected Vice Chancellor, Panjab University, all other dignitaries. It is a well-planned and well-written draft policy, which while going through the draft policy, which is the need of the hour. I would like to put few points here on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir Science, Technology and Innovation Council. J&K has a extremely well enrolling kids schools in schools from economically challenged backgrounds. Things here improved in higher education as well. There is a serious need of to upgrade the scientific temperament in schools, colleges and universities to achieve better results. All these institutions of learning should be connected with each other for small or big projects to remain relevant for each other and the future challenges. We cannot attain great things in pockets. We must separate things across. Educational scientific temperament should become way of life. And the schools, colleges, universities could be engaged in summer-winter internship in colleges and universities. There is a need of upgradation of scientific infrastructure in the institutions and at the district levels as well. So in colleges and universities, more time to focus needs to be focused. We invested in projects, patent filing, or knowledge to technology transfer for solving local and this regional problems. This drafted outdated examination grade system, unnecessarily fat syllabus is nothing but the pure wastage of nation's young minds and taxpayers also money. Emphasis should be given to the traditional knowledge system for development of local indigenous technologies and grassroots innovators. There should be a linkage, which is not actually, I'm not finding here. There should be a linkage between the grassroots innovators and the scientists for facilitation of their future research projects to make any meaningful roadway support for registration of innovations. Going to school, college, universities now a routine thing. It seems we all now educate, or we are now educated now and can get education from various online resources. However, we must now focus where to use this enormous knowledge. Now, using of this enormous knowledge is must. The educational universities, educational institutions, universities should now consider as a training centers. They should be considered as a training centers. It should be included in the new education policy, rather than lecturing, certificate, grades, course, and all that. Now, it is suggested that the college universities of UTs of Jammu and Kashmir should be provided with the entrepreneurship development centers, skill development incubation centers, wherein students post their academics can undergo training, skill development trainings, which are relevant for seeking employment with outside Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. And this would also help them to even start their startups with the financial help of the government of Union Territory at the initial stage. The UT universities should be equipped with the patent centers, wherein the innovators, idea creators can have the facility of registering their patents in patent centers. Post their registration of patent registration innovators, they can extend their research work and its benefits to the common masses within and outside the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Sir, I will submit here that UT of Jammu and Kashmir is proven to earthquakes, natural disasters. The policy should also include the seismographical centers, which can forewarn the general masses about the coming earthquakes, thereby reducing the impact of the human casualties. DST should extend support to Jammu and Kashmir Science Technology Innovation Council in strengthening its structure in terms of infrastructure, manpower in reasonable manner in order to cope up with the present challenges vis-a-vis affected the meaningful contributions for the welfare of the people of Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. The policy should also include the sufferings of the people in terms of health sector and education sector. The policy should also envisage the special attention in these sectors for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. With these words, I thank all the participants and the organizers.
Can I request all the participants to be very brief, because otherwise we will not able to take all the questions. So
Yes.
very briefly, I think 2 or 3 minutes should, we should not be able to finish entire lot if we don't stick to the time.
Yes. Hello.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your suggestion. And
Thank you. Thank you.
ahead, I would like to invite Dr. Rajesh Kumar Gangwar, Council of Science and Technology, Lucknow, Government of Uttar Pradesh. Over to you.
Over to you. Muszę powiedzieć, jak on dokąd zagarnął, bo widzicie wolno tak, it's a brief you to submit. Just here.
Dr. Rajesh Kumar, are you there?
Yes, am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Very good morning to all the.
Good morning, sir.
Actually, I have gone through the policy. It is very, very draft and very good certain policy. And I have just focused on one chapter of the policy, that is chapter number 4, which elaborated about the research. So there are many chapters. Couldn't go through all the chapters, and I am also not having much idea about all the chapters. So I have just focused on the chapter 4, and there are 4 sub chapters in that, and many things have been included, which even we not imagined at the time of when we were doing this consultation meet before drafting the policy. So many, I think, lot of exhaustive sessions have been organized to draft this policy. The only thing which I just want policy that for there should be implement mechanism, that how to implement this. Suppose a strong collaboration that build quality science and national problems, quality research. See, presently also there are various collaborative MOUs between the CSIR lab, DST lab, state universities and all that. But we need to think that up to what extent people are collaborating with those MOUs and all that. We have to find out a few points that may work positively. Otherwise, what I have seen, if there is a MOU between a state university and a good R&D institution laboratory, people come from there and get some photograph there and visit the R&D lab and go back there. It means that they are not working, but we are still not that much effective what we are looking for in future. There should be strong collaboration. So mechanism in implementation for the each point shall be defined. And another point is that we also fund, and DST is also giving lot of funds, but there is no uniformity in the providing the fund. if we look at the means some backward areas, वहाँ पे DST से भी or from the state councils also कम रहते हैं. So that what I want that we shall focus more, because quality research is one also very important point. Another point, we need to think of those areas where research has not been promoted at all. In small state universities, aspirational districts, for example, Uttar Pradesh, Bundelkhand region and Eastern UP districts. So we need to establish the center of excellences infrastructure in those universities and institutions also, so that we can involve them also in the research. Sometime we may get very good and output from means state level college, state level universities. There are good infrastructures available in central organization, in some good means state universities, but this infrastructure enrichment and funding should implementing of all these things which are mentioned in the chapter number 4 of research means a kind of mechanism shall be defined, and who will take the action, who will be the implementing body of that, because so many things were also mentioned in the last policy, but means still we are doing good, better, best, never rest until good is better and better is best. So I'm not going into the positive direction, but we may add some implementing mechanism to implement this policy in a better way. That is what is my comment on this chapter.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. I think I forgot to mention this point.
Very good. I'll communicate in written if anything else found from my statement. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and all the.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajesh. Actually, I missed that point. I forgot to mention. This is the policy document, never mentioned the implementation strategy. What we are doing is we are developing a separate document on implementing all the recommendation. Now, this we cannot do it alone. So what we are planning is there's going to be an inter-ministerial and inter-state discussions. You cannot have one size fit for all. That every state has unique problem. I mean, all states, you cannot equate them, similar way. There are resources issues, there are manpower issues, and there are so many issues. So what we are going to do is an implementation strategy document is going to be set up, going to be finalized in consultation with the stakeholder.
Yeah.
So this is what we are planning. Second issue is, this is another which we are going to do for the first time. That this policy is not going to be for 10 years. We are going to create a dynamic system that every third year we will update through the consultation with state and central ministries, because things are changing in a dynamic world. You can't have a static policy. So that's why we are going to have this policy and the dynamic policy updated every second year, every third year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sir, and thank you, Dr. Rajesh. Next, I would like
to speak earlier because of technical.
Sorry, I couldn't get you, sir.
I'm from Himachal. Can I say some few words? Because I could not talk earlier because of technical issues.
All right. Surjit Randhawa. Okay. Now I invite Mr. Surjit Randhawa from Himachal Pradesh State Council. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Very good morning to all. Dr. Akhilesh Gupta. First of all, my congratulations to Dr. Akhilesh Gupta and his entire team for coming up with a wonderful document which covers almost all the sectors which are concerned for at the national as well as state level. So I just want to see that if we have identify some success indicators in the policy document. So that at the end of the day, we should say that these are the indicators for the success of the policy. and there should be some common portal for the data sharing, man. Because these things should also be included if it is not included. So these things should be taken into consideration. And we are also, Himachal is also, we are also the last stage of the coming of a state science and technology innovation policy. We are drafted the final document. We have a brainstorming with the working group. Now we are a final consultation with the stakeholder department in the days to come under the chairmanship of principal secretary. Then will be this is more or less on the similar lines of the national policy, so that so we can integrate the national and the state policies, state science technology innovation policies. That's all. My congratulations to the entire team, DST team. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts on STIP 2021. And moving ahead, next I would like to invite Dr. Deepak Gupta, Chief Scientific Engineer, Haryana State Council for Science and Innovation and Technology, Government of Haryana. Over to you, Dr. Deepak Gupta.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, so far, I'm thankful to Center for Policy Research for giving us this opportunity to share our views on this STIP review. And I would like Dr.
Dr. Gupta, sorry to intervene. Actually, we can't hear you clearly. So if you switch off your video, I think then we can hear you clearly.
I hope now I'm audible better.
Yeah, yes, sir. Please go ahead.
I would like to congratulate Dr. Akhilesh Gupta and his entire team for this excellent document, which discusses everything, all the aspects, all the sectors, all the major issues. I wish that all these things mentioned in the policy are implemented very timely and by all my stakeholders. And my first point regarding the policy was with respect to the implementation strategy, but Dr. Akhilesh has already clarified about that one. Because it will give us a pathway for all the stakeholders to consider that one and go ahead. I think states need to go with this policy, prepare a road for the implementation as well as the formulating their own things. And as you're aware that a large number of central schemes are implemented by state governments in the area of agriculture, health, women and child development, irrigation and water resources. We have seen that the health department now they have performed at the state level during this pandemic. So there is a need that state dedicated schemes that is started by the Ministry of Science and Technology as well, which can be implemented by states for the welfare of the society. It's very important because we have seen a very successful story in the health sector, how state governments have performed brilliantly, all the state governments, and fight with the pandemic COVID-19. Second one is that DST-Centre is providing a large number of grants to universities, institutions, industries, and startups. But there is some gap, some communication gap, I think, is there, which is to be addressed in the policy document. That the grant which is coming to the state, to the various stakeholders, sometimes the state DST department is not aware of those. What work is going on in various institutions, various industries, and various startups. There is some communication gap is there between the central DST and state DST. So my only request is that a mechanism is to be adopted in the policy document, that at least a sanction order to the state DST for its information and monitoring if at all it is required at the state level for the monitoring of those schemes, those projects that are funded by the state government, plus by central government and the state institutions. So this will help us in knowing that what is going around for the state, it is funded by the central DST. And at the same time, the duplication of work will also be avoided in the future. So these are my brief remarks on the point. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your perspective on STIP 2021. It was an honor to have you all in this event of national importance. With this, I conclude this session here, and I invite my co-moderator, Radhika, for taking the session ahead. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you, Ms. Mamta. Now we move to the second session in our segment 2. Here we will take the comments from the representatives from academic and research institutes. Keeping the paucity of time in mind, I'll request all our representatives in this session to be very precise, around 2 to 3 minutes. We can have detailed comments and feedbacks from you through mail, and we can share it and communicate to Dr. Gupta and to the STIP Secretariat. So without delaying any further, I invite Dr. Archana Mantri, Vice Chancellor, Chandigarh University, for her comments. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone at the Policy Research Department at Panjab University, and also Dr. Gupta for taking this initiative. Just a quick comment on the policy. When the consultations are done at all the levels, what Dr. Gupta just explained, this is what you see as a document, as a policy document. And everyone here has appreciated it. And I am also joining the bandwagon. This is definitely a very thorough document. Having said that, I had this recommendation, but Dr. Gupta has already answered that this particular document is a policy document as a strategy document. And what we need and what the country needs, the nation needs, is an implementation document also. And Dr. Gupta has already clarified that. So we are going to wait for the implementation document to come up, and also with detailed performance indicators and the work plan for each one of us. The second thing is, I looked at the STIP from two viewpoints, as a beneficiary and as a mediator to implement the policy and to see the impact at the grassroots levels. Now, many of us has that apprehension in mind and also concern in mind that this policy document, and for that matter, any policy document and implementation document should be actually looking the impact at the grassroots levels. And many of us have already worded this out. And I would also like to see both from a beneficiary and a grassroots and a implementer viewpoints that what is going to be the impact at grassroots levels. The second thing that I want to bring to the fore is that when we are making this policy document and when we are looking at this policy document, in fact, I was also one of the members of 9-member committee of preparing implementation document for the national education policy. And therein we indicated, we in fact spelled out all the performance indicators and the detailed plan and the milestones which are going to be there. What I want to bring to the table is that there are a lot of other policy documents also getting prepared. For example, we have this national education policy. We also talked, in fact, Dr. Gupta also talked about the national research framework, which is going to come up. We already have the startup policy, and a lot of versions of the startup policy is also coming up. My question is how you would make the implementers upload the data. In fact, you are talking of a central repository of putting where all the data related to STI would be available, and also with research. So you will have to, in fact, we will have to find out a mechanism that people are motivated to upload the data over there, because unless the data is uploaded, it will not be available as a repository. So I'm sure the policymakers would be looking at that particular aspect also. Another thing is, we all know about Atal ranking of institutions for innovation achievements. And much like Dr. Gupta, you were talking about REFI, the Research Excellence Framework. So this kind of a competition definitely brings in a lot of motivation and drive from the academic institutes and from, and for that matter, all these stakeholders to upload the data, to put the data and use the data from the central repository. So all those things can be, I think, kept in mind while the policymakers are also preparing the implementation document. Also, just last point, we also need to take care of the international opportunities which are available out there, and they should also be available at the central portal, because not only the national opportunities, national data, but also a lot of international funding for developing countries and for countries like India are available. So let's look at those things also to be available at the central repository. That's all from my side. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mantri. With this, I move to Dr. Lovi Raj Gupta, Executive Dean, Faculty of Technology and Science, Lovely Professional Universities, joining us from Jalandhar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Radhika. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please go ahead.
I must join the team in congratulating Dr. Akhilesh Gupta and Team STPI for really putting up those efforts. You know, when Dr. Gupta was talking about 9,000 people had one-to-one interaction. You know, it seems just a statement, but it takes a toll to go to that level, to go to deep to that level. And it is something, you know, which is well laid off. From 25 years of age to 84 years of age, you can comprehend, if you can collect or aggregate the thoughts. I must appreciate that. Quickly, I'll move on to my points. In chapter 10, we are talking about interstate governance mechanisms, center-state governance mechanism. So there has to be a chapter of inter-institutional governance mechanism for sure, because the basic need of the hour is that two institutions should talk to each other in terms of availability of resources, the thrust areas, and the kind of work which they are doing. This can be done by creation of a consortium, academia consortium. Like you have CII. Why can't we have AII? See, that is the need of the hour, because you know we are working in silos. We are in islands. So there needs to be a connectivity, and STPI policy can very well lay down that connects. In chapter 6, when we are talking about spin-off for civilian use, sir, let this policy talk about frameworks like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, because that is the need of the country. In today, say for example, a group has created a proof of concept. Let that proof of concept be shown, displayed on a website for people to handhold it, both in terms of technology and technological updations, as well as in terms of funding. Right now, it sits onto the table or it sits inside the lab, but it is not displayed to the entire world. Let us move on to a framework, and this STPI can very well include frameworks like that. My next observation or my next point would be on chapter 5, which talks about innovation center at university level. We at LPU have seen sea change in innovating and ideating temperament of students. We already have an innovation studio, and there students are they flock with their ideas, and there are mentors available, and we've seen loads of innovations coming out of it. So we need to strengthen this by defining a very clear-cut framework or a mechanism that how these innovation centers or innovation studios at university level would connect to other universities, as I mentioned earlier, and would actually reach out to public through frameworks like Kickstarter, Indian frameworks like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I once again congratulate STPI team as a whole, because I was seeing smiling faces, Dr. Gupta. And yes, those smiles, we endorse that these smiles have resulted in wonderful document. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for especially your smiling comment on the smiling faces. Thank you. Now I move to Professor Ashwini Parekh from National Agri-Food Biotech Institute, Mohali. He's leading as an executive director. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I think, first of all, let me put on record my sincere thanks and congratulations to Dr. Akhilesh Gupta and the whole team at DST, who has put in such a wonderful document, which which has not left any aspect untouched and not any stone unturned in that aspect. I will be really brief in my comment related to research because ours is a research R&D department. I think one of the components which I like, Dr. Gupta, in the document is related to traditional knowledge, documentation, and all that. This has been really wonderful because, as you are aware, we lost the Neem patent and Haldi patent, but we could revive it because of availability of traditional knowledge in some of the editing books. I think this component, which has been now formally included in the document, is going to help a lot of patenting issues and a lot of innovations in that area. So congratulations for taking care of even such minor things. Second thing I would like to touch upon briefly is that one nation, one subscription to the journal. This is really wonderful. As a researcher, as an individual, I have worked at Jawaharlal Nehru University for the last many years. We find this is the real issue you have touched upon because many a time we have to ask our student postdoc who are abroad, please send me this paper, please send me this paper. So I think this is really going to help. I just have one proposal, recommendation or request which can be included. As you are saying that this is going to be dynamic policy. I would really request, we can extend this one nation, one license scheme, not only to the journal, but there are many technologies available. I'm talking about genome editing tools and technologies. At the moment, there are limited companies who are having license to it. As an individual, I get it, my colleague get it. And when you're using these tools and technologies, the IPR issues actually comes in. Suppose if my project goes to higher level and I'm able to commercialize my document or my invention, then it really comes at what all components have been used in that patent. I have been actively following my patent and we have almost 24 patents from our lab. So these things which are related to adopting the technology and the tools which are owned by the company should be unrestricted to anybody who's using it for that purpose. I think at some stage, not at this stage, it can be extended to the availability of such tools and technology. I'm just talking about the genome editing technology. We use certain vectors which are known as CRISPR-Cas vector. At the moment, they are available for academia, but academia research should, and it is being translated, it's moving in that direction towards translation. So I think these kind of provisions would really help researcher, and this will go a long way. And at the last, thank you very much, Dr. Gupta and everybody, and thanks for this opportunity which I got to talk to Dr. Gupta. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful suggestions and feedback that you have given to us. Now I move to Srimati Sunita Goel, Director, National Institute of Electronics and Information Technology from Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. She is joining us from Ropar. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, we cannot hear you. You are unmuted yourself, but we still cannot hear you. Good afternoon, ma'am. Yeah, we can. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon to everybody. Actually, I've gone through the policy and just now about the details, I have presentation from Mr. Dr. Akhilesh Gupta. I have nothing much to comment on the policy. I thank you giving due participation to women in this policy. So I thank for this well-drafted policy. I have nothing much to comment on.
All right, thank you, Sunita. Now I quickly move to a professor from Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow. She is Dean of School of Pharmaceutical Science. I request you, ma'am, Shubhani Sharaf, ma'am, to present her views on the policy. Over to you, ma'am. Professor Shubhani, you there? I think so. We are not able to hear. We can come back to her. So now I can move to Professor S.K. Mehta. He's a professor, Department of Chemistry for Panjab University, Chandigarh, and he's also a coordinator of a Chandigarh Region Innovation Knowledge Cluster. I'm sure S.K. Mehta, sir, you will like to first, in 1 minute, just explain what this CRIX is all about, and then we can have your comment. Over to you, Professor Mehta.
Thank you, Radhika, for the invitation. I am very grateful to CPR for giving this opportunity on behalf of CRIC. I am coordinator of the CRIC. CRIC is basically Chandigarh Region Innovation Knowledge Cluster. Basically, the idea was to make all the institutes in the Tri-City to come together and create, exchange ideas and so on. So with that idea, our previous Vice Chancellor, Professor Grover, in 2013, he created this cluster where all institutes can participate. Whatever programs are going on in institutes, the other faculty or students can participate in those programs. And many of the programs we jointly also are organizing. So, for example, if some Nobel laureate comes into one of the institutes, he can visit institutes also under this umbrella, which is CRIC. So that way it's a good platform for collaboration. So, on behalf of CRIC, I'm very grateful to Professor Gupta for giving us overview of this policy, which has been very well drafted policy. And it covers, I think, all aspects which are needed to bring our country to a higher level. I'll just make one point that in one of the points, it is written that proactive international S&T engagement strategy intensifying engagements with the diaspora through attracting the best talent back home. So that is a good idea that we can invite our talent, which is in many of the countries, leading countries, to come home and join different institutions. Other than that, we can also invite leading scientists, foreign nationals. Like under this GYAN programs, we have been organizing several such courses. In India, I was the coordinator there, the coordinator of that also, and that has benefited our students and faculty a lot. When a foreign scientist visit for at least 1 week or 10 days, then naturally it gives a different aspect to the participants. They directly interact with the people, and then they learn so many things. So that sort of thing can be also included specifically in this policy. Other than that, there is a faculty crunch in most of the universities. There comes the implementation part of this policy. Unless we have a good faculty, sufficient faculty in different universities, and if you talk of the private institutions, so many institutions have come up in India. But what about the state of faculty? If faculty is there, if faculty is there, then they are not getting the salary, sufficient salary to do good work. So all these aspects also has to be looked in, and that also will come under implementation part. So, but overall, I can say that is very good, and only thing is if we can, if government can give 6% of the GDP, they can invest in science and technology, then India can progress like any other developed country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mehta. I think you, first of all, I have also been associated with CRIC right from the day it was established in 2013. At that time, I was Secretary UGC, and Professor Grover and we had several rounds of discussion, and after the CRIC was developed. I mentioned in the presentation that the big challenge for India to multiply the researcher and especially faculty in the university, and it's not going to happen just by money. So even if you give 10% of the GDP, it will not going to happen. It requires a different strategy. For suggesting this, in fact, 2% of GDP itself is a huge amount. Right now we are sending only 0.6. And we had done a much greater, much deeper study in this area. Mere money will not guide people. Actually, it requires a very different study. So I'm not going to elaborate, but it requires a very different study. But thank you very much for the good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, for addressing the comments that Professor Mehta has made. I once again thank you all our representatives from academic and research institutes. I'm sure the inputs will definitely enhance the process of a policy finalization. I move to the next session, that is for the industry participants. I request my co-moderator, Ms. Mamta, to invite our representatives. Over to you, Mamta.
Thank you again, Radhika. And now we proceed to our third segment where we will take questions from our industry representatives. So without wasting much time, firstly, I would like to invite Dr. Vinay Mehta, CEO and co-founder, Pole World Technology Private Limited, Panchkula, and Head Technology Transfer Office at KIIT Technology Business Incubator. So, Dr. Vinay Mehta, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mamta. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, great. First of all, Dr. Gupta and his team, my congratulations to you for drafting a wonderful policy, which I think includes almost everything, whatever, I could have imagined. And, it's a very comprehensive document, which has really come up very well. I have only 3 points, and which maybe, seem out of the box or something like that. But, since I have faced that in my experience of 30 years in both government and private institutes, private universities, as well as from the industry perspective, as well as, I'm leading a TTO at KIIT now, where we are interacting with the industry a lot. So the first point is about the collaborative research centers, which you mentioned in the policy. Actually, this is a very good idea of co-creation or co-development of technologies, because as you rightly said, the technology readiness levels from the academic institutes is not that great, maybe at level 3 or 4, but industry wants it, at level 6 or 7 actually, right? So for that, even they are ready to pool in their funds, like something like you must be aware of, the schemes of DBT and BIRAC, wherein they have schemes wherein, even the Defense Innovation Organization, wherein funds come from the government and matching grants come from the industry. The practical difficulty in managing the funds is the audit. In public institutions, the audit, as you must be aware, is a kind of it slows down the process of research and moving fast, because when you are working in a comparative technology, you need the faster results. You want to fail faster and move forward, right? So I think we might need creation of some scientific and technical audit stream under the Auditor General of India, wherein science and engineering graduates or postgraduates undergo the audit training and those things, because they can better understand the research environment and those things, right? Since the most of the audit guys are purely from the arts stream, and they have a very set mentality about procedures and all those things, and they don't understand the technicalities of the scientific project, so a lot of hassles and time wastage is there. So you might think about making such a recommendation to the government, to the other ministry of so that's one point. Second, science media centers, and this is a very good point. I would like that we should start some courses in the universities on science journalism, science mass communication, right? And we could have, I mean, if I want to see, for my daughter, I want to see every TV channel having at least one science news in every news, thing. And some kind of like I think Professor Nasir from J&K said that, the demonstration of the projects, in the news, so that also will help to educate the masses and bring up a scientific temperament in the children and the families and the citizens. So that is the need of the hour. Right now, all the TV channels are, all politics and all other kind of news. The science news is missing totally, from the major communication channels. So that is something, we need to, look into that. And the third point, which has been mentioned by, other esteemed members also, is that we need to have some kind of guidelines or schemes for promoting research from tier 2 and tier 3 city-based institutions, right? And maybe in collaboration with the tier 1 institutions, like, actually the whole concept of IITs was to spread the knowledge to the regions. And now I think we have around 25, 26 IITs and other institutes of national importance. They should be, they and other universities should be made responsible for spreading this and collaborating with the colleges and institutions in their region, so as to promote the scientific temperament and scientific innovation, actually, because there are a lot of innovators, who are just doing innovation out of their own experiential knowledge, right? So as the policy rightly said, that you want to take the grassroots innovators, into the mainstream. So that's a very good step. But the mechanism for this would be to enable the universities to, get in touch with them, or they should get in touch with them, and then form certain projects, which should be, that whole ecosystem has to be encouraged. That will help us, build a scientific innovation. And I would say, for when we are targeting top 3, like you rightly said, you can be at any position in the top 3, but I would want India to be topmost country in the world as far as the scientific innovation is concerned. And only if we target that, and everybody is up for that only, only then we might achieve something like second or third, something like that. So with these, I would like to, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Vinay Mehta, for your valuable suggestions on STIP 2021. Our next panelist from the industry sector is Mr. Manish Gupta, Vice Chairman. So over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
So basically, I'm an engineering graduate from PEC Chandigarh, and now I'm operating MSME manufacturing components for defense. So I always dreamed of interaction and integration of industry with the academic and the R&D institution. I congratulate Dr. Akhilesh Gupta for this draft policy. It is a very positive step in integration of industry, academic institutions, and R&D institutions. Many diversified fields like pharma, defense will be benefited by this integrated ecosystem. My main emphasis would be the funding. In funding in STPI policy for R&D for MSME, I would request that we should encompass the entire value chain and components of technology development. That includes research, technology development, POC, pilot testing, field trials, technology and IP acquisitions, innovation, IP filling, contract research in India and abroad, technology commercialization, research and innovation capability development, that include sponsorship for the postdoctoral programs for the employees, staff. That means any investment that is required to translate that idea to market by the industry should be included in the funding and the financing of this policy. This would not only take as a key holder for any MSME, it would be an innovation that they would create for the industry as a whole and for the India as a whole. My other point would be that though it is still a draft policy, but I would request that the authorities concerned should take a broader spec so that our implementation should be more stronger. Being India major front runner or MSME, so only if it develops the skill development and the implementation part is actually a practical utility, it will help evolve new technologies by MSME. The key step I would take from Dr. Akhilesh would be the ease of doing research. The ease for implementation will help really in implementation of this policy and not only make us more Atmanirbhar and make in India more effective. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on STIP 2021. We will sure consider them. So, everyone, all of the officials from industry for sharing your valuable 2021. But unfortunately, some of our industry panelists were not able to do commitments. So, if you want to share more on please visit the official website of DST-CPR at Chandigarh and official website of Govt. So now I invite Dr. Radhika to take the event forward. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you, Mamta. With this, we come to the end segment of our event, the concluding segment. But before that, Dr. Gupta, if you permit, we can have 2-3 questions, or like as we are running ahead of a time for this. There are a number of comments and a number of suggestions that we are receiving from our social media platforms, especially from the YouTube chat. So they are recommending some of the changes that can be suggested, how we can collaborate with the implementation plan that national education policy is coming up. Most of them are asking for the implementation plan, but some of them have a specific query. If you permit, I can ask 1 or 2 questions to you.
So I think, Radhika, since we are running behind time, in fact, I am watching the social media parallelly on my mobile. Okay, so I am also seeing all these comments and suggestions, and they are wonderful suggestions. So what we can do is that we can compile all these suggestions and then address separately, because we really don't have much time, and many of the panelists might need to go to some other meetings, including myself. I have another meeting at 1:30. So I would suggest that we will keep these suggestions for answering separately, and I think let's proceed further with our.
Right. So, Dr. Gupta, then I invite you back again for your concluding remarks on what all our panelists have shared with us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Radhika and Mamta. You did, wonderful job of, moderating this session. And thank you all for giving us, some great ideas. And let me start with, our Dr. Jatinder Kaur. She started with very good ideas like, and integrating with the national network from the center, state to center. I think this is a wonderful idea. We would definitely like to take it up, and maybe at the implementation strategy. In fact, as I said, we will come back to you for finalizing the national implementation strategy. So there could be some more ideas on this thing. Yes, I think we will definitely help you in taking state initiative forward, and whatever way you like, our team will help you. Radhika is our representative from the STIP team, and I would ask Radhika to discuss with you personally, and whatever you want, good idea about technology facilitation centers. I think this I would like to take it up. Maybe this is a great idea that need to be taken up, just like patent facilitation centers. And in fact, Dr. Nasir, in fact, mentioned some of the things that should have science temperament included at the education level. I think this is already there. If you read the policy, you will trying to get these things, and that is how the national education policy and national science and technology policy are getting synergized. So you find many great ideas that NEP had are synergized with the STIP. So I won't go into detail, but I think all these ideas are there already. In this STIP. Earthquake warning system, etc., will not be in the purview of this policy, but we will like to facilitate all other disaster management system and all of it. I think this is not a part of the policy as such. This is the more kind of operational part. with my thing. I think Archana had a good point. She said that how the data will be uploaded. So what we are going to do is, Archana, this is as I said, we are yet to prepare a study document. And this creating a national STI observatory is not a new idea, but the entire issue need to be looked afresh. How do we do entire segment of the implementation? It is a huge task. It is not it cannot be done in overnight in 1 or 2 years. It's a long term. So what we are going to do is set up a national committee, expert committee on this, how to implement. It has something like 10 main segments. I have not mentioned all those segments. For example, creating a digital library. See, libraries was a time when library system used to be very strong for all students and researchers. Now library system has transformed like anything. It is all digital system. We need to connect. Similarly, I think somebody mentioned about the infrastructure. Infrastructure sharing and access is another very big area that we need to look at from democratization point of view. See, that is how democracy should work. Rich and poor, and the urban and rural, all these issues have been, in fact, thought about. So this is a big issue, and we need a thorough debate on this issue. It requires a lot of work on this thing. But thank you. I think this is an area which you see entire, and you said international. Yes, international opportunities will come on the portal, in a big way. So don't worry. These are we are going to. In fact, we are seized of all the ideas. This is a big chapter. Here in the policy, it is written as only few pages. But separately, we have a long, notes on this. Dr. Laviraj ji, I think it is your, thank you very much for this thing. I think you are rightly mentioned that, the inter-institutional collaboration part. And this is the biggest gray area in the STI. I would tell you, I think you rightly mentioned how it can be done. And, there's another thing, and let me be very frank with you, because I've been, biggest advocate of private universities. There is a, disconnect between the private university and government system. In terms of funding, in terms of collaboration, in terms of interconnection, so there is a chapter on interconnectedness, chapter 10. If you read that, it does talk about these things, how institution can work together. So we are, in fact, this area has been discussed at length in the chapter. If you read, you find there's a mention of this interconnectedness of institutions. So, thank you very much for your great ideas, and also innovation centers, as you mentioned. And I would personally like to come and see that. I think this requires, it's an very important thing, and every university must set up an innovation center. Funding part is definitely an issue, but we'll see that. I think also Dr. Parikh, your suggestion of how how do we create collection and extend the various facility to other institutions is very important. Also, we had, I think Dr. Mehta mentioned about the diaspora issue. This is, we interact, the international cooperation policy is going to take a big change here. I'm not going to elaborate here because chapter does say something, but we are going to work again. This is going to be debated how we are. In fact, on 27th, we have a roundtable with 30 science attaches, 30 science attaches of different countries. And these are all interactions showing that we would like to work proactively with all the countries, and especially we would like to address the diaspora because they can contribute in a big way, not just in bringing them back, but also sitting there and thinking. And one area I wanted to elaborate here is technology indigenization. See, the one, if you read this policy, you will find one mention, and that is how India can cut down the technology import. We have huge technology import. Everything is China, everything is US and all. Technology import, we have great burden. How do we ease it out? Now, there is a strategy that been this policy that use diaspora to work for the technology indigenization. And so I think if you carefully read, you will get the idea what exactly we mean by that. So also creating an ecosystem where the international diaspora plus industry and R&D and academia, how these all 4 or 5 components can work together. It needs a different national strategy. That is why I think, so thank you. I think we are good suggestions. And thank you, Mr. Vinay Mehta and Mr. Manish Gupta for giving us good ideas about the. I think you, Mr. Vinay, you mentioned about the auditing of the. So what we have done now, in fact, there is one national mission that we launched on interdisciplinary cyber physical system. We totally new implementation and monitoring system, not experimented in India, so far. In this thing, the entire mission is led by industry. It is an industry-led mission in by government, but it is led by industry. And all the entire implementation process and monitoring process is free from all the administrative and financial restrictions that you have. So it short circuit entire process, fast implementation, even recruitment is differently done, not following exactly the way GFR mentioned that 11 hona chahiye, chahe substandard ho. All that we have done, everything. Now this need to be replicated further. Industry, there is a mistrust. I would say very frankly, there is a mistrust between industry and government. I think that trust need to be developed. That trust can be developed only when we create an ecosystem where both work in tandem, in unison. So that's a very good, and Science Media Center idea is great. I think we have, taking TRL, and not only just higher TRL, BRL also, the business readiness level and the TRL need to be synergized. That we have not done. I think we need to work, and when industry and R&D are going to work together, TRLs and DRL need to be synergized. Idea to market, Mr. Manish Gupta, what you said, to be funded by in the project. I think it is already there in some form, but I think, thank you very much. This idea, we in fact are kind of contemplating how do we create the entire chain of development, right from the technology development to idea to prototype to going for the translation and market. Entire chain need to be funded. Some experiment, you know that GIRAP model is that way, but I think we need to have more such models developing in the country so that industry get not only, what you call, get the confidence, but also get empowered. One big example is COVID-19, where the industry and R&D, how they work for the ventilators and the PPE and diagnostic. That's the biggest example in recent time. That's a very real thing. So anyway, thank you very much. I think I learned a lot. This was quite educating to me and got good some ideas. Our team has compiled all. Let me mention that we have a great backend team sitting here and watching this and noting down every conversation, and this conversation also getting recorded. Our biggest strength of the STIP was our team, because they work, very hard, and they made me to work very hard. So it was a thrilling experience with all of them, and with your cooperation, I think we will be able to take this policy forward. Thank you very much for all your suggestions. Please post your suggestion by email also. We can take it more formally, these suggestions. We are going to compile these suggestions and try to address them in a holistic way. With that, I thank once again all of you, and also thank my team for being a big support to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, for the wonderful words that you have been conveyed to the team as well, and the ideas and the passion behind making India truly globally competitive. So we still have only 4-5 minutes from you till you go out of the meeting around 1:30. So with this, now I invite Professor Pathak, Professor Emeritus, Department of Physics and NASI Platinum Jubilee Fellow, to give his final remarks, and then I will request Professor S.K. Gupta to offer his vote of thanks. Over to you, Professor Pathak.
Yes, madam. Incidentally, I was informed only last evening, so I have not been able to look into various documents. Last evening I downloaded this policy, which comprises of 11 chapters, which Mr. Akhilesh Gupta has very nicely presented, and I compliment Akhilesh Gupta and his team for doing a wonderful job in such a short time, within a less than year times, producing such a exhaustive documents on science, technology, innovation program. He has justified and given the reason for the another science, technology, innovation policy in the last 6 years for various reasons. And I personally think that it is a COVID motivated project which has come up. And COVID has given many examples for innovation in scientific sector, like ventilator and kits, as said by him. So these are the important reasons for going ahead for such a policy. There are few thoughts in my mind which I would like to share with Mr. Akhilesh Gupta. The first one, he talks about single system of subscription for the Indian publication, Indian journals. What about the international journals? What about international publication on science and technology? How will you access them? We must think about that as well, that we must bring into this platform how to, because those cost money and is not easily accessible. Science and technologies are the international subjects. We are to be abreast with the development going on in the international sector as well. So there should be some mechanism how to get the international subscription with our educational institution and industry. The next point I want to tell about the trust deficit between the industry and educational institution. Our industry are not coming forward to support the educational institution to produce the product. There is a lot of research and development going on in the universities which are not being used properly. And therefore, this trust deficit must be removed. Some discussion requires for this as well. And there is something like Jugaad technology. You are talking about ingenious technology. So Jugaad technology is a very old tested, time tested technology working in India. There should be some inclusion and recognition of this Jugaad technology in India. That's my suggestion, that it should be included in this documents, Jugaad technology, by the name of simply as a Jugaad technology, you know. And this is a time-tested work. When the machine, our motors, our cars, when they don't work, our mechanics comes and they start without the sophisticated instruments. So that must be mentioned in this document. I think he has given various reason and development in this production of these documents, and himself described the very salient features, 11 chapters in this program, and I think that they have given a very exhaustive presentation of the materials. They need to be finalized by, fine-tuning of this document is required. And that's with these documents, once with these remarks, I compliment Mr. Akhilesh Gupta, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta and his team for doing the wonderful job. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Professor Kathak. Let me clarify that point, that what we are talking is subscription to international only. Most of the Indian journals are free. So we are talking about international journal only, and the total money that we pay to international journal is 1,500 crore annually. That's a number, that's a money. The second issue is that you mentioned about the trust deficit part. I think this is what we are trying to address through this policy in a big way. The last point you mentioned, Jugaad, actually the policy has clear this in the name of, frugal technologies and frugal innovation. And so there is a chapter on, when we are talking about the grassroots innovation, there is very thin demarcation between the frugal innovation and the, grassroots innovation. We are talking about these things in a big way. So I think this policy covers most of those concerns that you have mentioned. Thank you.
But this Jugaad word should be used in our document.
It is there in some form, but if you want, we can see, because this policy is going to be,
Jugaad is an international word. I wish to mention to you that it has been used by international scientists, Indian Jugaad.
Okay, we will include. Thank you very much for the suggestion. We will include. We have not mentioned Jugaad word, but we have mentioned frugal.
Indian Jugaad is used by international scientists.
Okay, thank you. We will include. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I quickly just invite Professor S.K. Maheta, Coordinator CRIX, to offer vote of thanks. And meanwhile, I'll request everyone, I have made all the attendees as the participants. They can switch on their camera and we can take a group photograph virtually. Over to you, Professor Maheta.
Thank you, Radhika, once again. And really, it was worth listening to everyone. And in the vote of thanks, I just would like to mention that the aim of this policy, this is science, technology, and innovation policy, is to transform the national science and science, technology, and innovation landscape. That is, we can say. And the main focus is Atmanirbhar, or what could we say, self-reliant India, which is a central theme of this policy. And it has proposed several new established and reforms through short-term, medium-term, and long-term vision mode. And I think this will transform the science and technology in India. So overall, I would first of all, I would like to thank our worthy Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajkumar, who has given opportunity to CPR to organize such a wonderful, on science and technology, and he has been encouraging all the faculty members to organize various events, so which is not only benefiting to the faculty and students of Panjab University, also to the CRIC institutes and on a larger scale to other institutes, industry, everywhere. So thanks to Professor Rajkumar. Next, I would really like to thank Dr. Akhilesh Gupta for giving us overview of these major recommendations of Draft Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2021. And I can see that they have covered, he and his team has covered all the aspects which are required to boost our science and technology in India. So really heartiest thanks to Dr. Akhilesh Gupta. Last but not the least, I am thankful to all the state and UT representatives from various places, J&K, Himachal, UP, Haryana, and even Ladakh, and also representative from academic and research institutes, and representative from industry. So we are really grateful on behalf of CRIC to all the participants who gave their important views. And I think Dr. Akhilesh Gupta will receive many other suggestions from them also. And lastly, it's a matter of great pleasure to thank Professor C. Nirmala, who is coordinator of DST-Centre for Policy Research at Panjab University, Chandigarh. And, since joining, taking over as coordinator, she has brought this DST CPR to a high level by organizing several important events. So I also thank to our worthy previous Vice Chancellor, ex-Vice Chancellor, who has given very important, Professor Pathak, who has given important inputs. And overall, thanks to Radhika and Mamta for coordinating. And I thank everybody for this wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With this, we end the live streaming. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Gupta.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Gupta.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.